Alright, what's happening everybody? It's your boy Keenan. Welcome to today's vlog. We are on week 7 of the NFL season and there are 0 interleague matches this week, so I'm going to give you all matches that include the NFC conference teams. Now I'm going to start with the matchup between the Washington Redskins at the New York Giants at MetLife Stadium. This is going to be an interesting matchup because Washington pulled off a big win at home against Minnesota last week due to the efforts by quarterback RG3 Robert Griffin III passing for pretty well as running the football for 138 yards and 2 rushing touchdowns, especially with that long one. Helped out a lot of fantasy teams out there for you fantasy football players. For this matchup, I'm going to have to go with the New York Giants because of the ability they could pass a little bit better than Washington. Washington's pretty bad against the pass, and both Eli Manning and Victor Cruz is going to be a big-time threat for that defense for the Washington Redskins. But even though they had a great matchup, I have to go against the Washington Redskins again this week because I think because of the New York Giants' big victory at San Francisco, a better football team all around, I actually got to go with the New York Giants over the Washington Redskins, but this is going to be a good NFC East showdown. Next game we need to talk about, headed to the NFC South between the New Orleans Saints against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, this is going to be a hard pick for me, but I'm going to go with Drew Brees and the Saints. I think they're going to get that mojo going for this matchup. I think they're going to have a good matchup overall, but it's going to be very close because of Tampa Bay's defense. Their front seven is working pretty well, but they're going to have to attack Drew Brees and get to the quarterback in order to win this matchup. Now, going to the offensive side for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they're a little bit inconsistent, so that's why I had to take a step back and go with the Saints over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But like I said, it's going to be a close matchup. For fantasy tips out there, I have a sleeper for you guys with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think you should go ahead and start as a flex pay player, LeGarrette Blount, because he's been getting a little bit more carries and he had a decent week last week. Also, the New Orleans Saints give up the most points for fantasy football players for the running back position, so I think this is going to be a good pickup for you guys for fantasy play. But like I said, I'm going to go with the Saints in this matchup. Next game we need to talk about, the Dallas Cowboys are going to travel to Carolina to face the Panthers. Now, this Dallas team overall is very undisciplined. They lead the league in penalties, and that cannot happen in this matchup. But going to the Carolina side, they've been pretty inconsistent overall. Not that much improvement by sophomore quarterback Cam Newton. I thought he was going to progress based on last season's Rookie of the Year performance he had last year, but he's been struggling a lot this season, and he's looking like he's not really maturing too much. So I'm going to go with the Dallas Cowboys at that, even though they do lead the league in penalties. Because of that defense, particularly that passing defense, I think they're going to shut down Steve Smith, who I believe you should bench this week in fantasy play, and cause problems for Cam Newton, especially DeMarcus Ware leading that defensive line for that Dallas defense. I'm going to have to go with the Cowboys over the Panthers. Next game we need to talk about, the Green Bay Packers are going to be traveling to St. Louis to face the Rams. Fantasy football tip for you guys, another sleeper. I think you should go right ahead and start Brandon Gibson at the receiver position. I think he could be a good flex, probably a number 2 receiver for fantasy football play. The reason behind this is because he's been getting the most targets ever since Danny Amendola, their leading receiver, had to leave due to injuries. He ended up injuring that shoulder, so he's still going to be out for the next couple of weeks. So the top target guy for Sam Bradford is Brandon Gibson. So I think he can still give you some good, valuable fantasy points, at least 10 points against that Green Bay defense. Now, overall, I'm still going to stick with the Green Bay Packers in this matchup because they're finally getting everything together. They had a big victory last week against a then undefeated team, the Houston Texans, and they're getting that mojo together, and they're getting that offense and that swag back for what we seen when they won the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. They're off to the right track. They're getting this team back in the right direction and headed into the playoffs. Hopefully, they just need to continue to perform well. Aaron Rodgers, Jordy Nelson's getting everything together, give you some good fantasy points, and I think this is going to be a little bit too much for that St. Louis defense. Next game we need to talk about, the Arizona Cardinals is going to be traveling to Minnesota to face the Vikings. Now, for this game, I'm going to have to go with the Minnesota Vikings because I think they're going to bounce back from their loss last week to the Washington Redskins. Also, Arizona lost 2 straight games, including last week's overtime game against the Buffalo Bills. I don't think they're going to recover too much from that. That defense is going to keep them them in the game, but I'm still a little bit iffy on the offensive side for Arizona. They lack running ability compared to Minnesota Vikings. They can pound the rock with Toby Gerhart as being a more short yardage back, and as well as Adrian Peterson. He's the leading rusher. He's still having a good season, and plus Percy Harvin, he's a good weapon for that offensive side. And I have to give compliments to quarterback Christian Ponder. He's actually having a good sophomore season, and I'm pretty surprised. He's actually developing, and I'm actually understanding why the Minnesota Vikings picked him in the first round of last season's NFL draft. And I think he could be a good quarterback in the future, but we will see. He still has a little bit developmental issues that he needs to take care of, but I think he's getting his mechanics together a little bit and improving, and I have to give him that. Good kudos for Christian Ponder. Next game we need to talk about, the Monday night matchup. The last matchup we need to talk about is between the Detroit Lions at Chicago to face the Bears. Now this is an easy pick for me. That Bears defense, Brandon Marshall leading the way at the receiver position for quarterback Jay Cutler. I gotta go with the Bears in this one. Also, the Lions offense, they have been struggling this year, and they're still not finding that stride on the offensive side, particularly for Calvin Johnson. He's getting a lot of yardage, but he only has one receiving touchdown this season. And I think because of that, I have to go again for the Chicago Bears. They're having an impressive year, but they need to pound the rock a lot more with Matt Moore or whoever is at quarterback to help out Jay Cutler. Also, with the loss of Alshon Jeffrey, that running game is going to have to improve in this matchup to help out that Bears offense. But I think this is going to be an easy win for them. Not an easy win for them, but a good, decent victory against a Detroit Lions team in that competitive NFC North Conference. So I'm going to have to go with the Bears over the Lions in this matchup. Now, I'm going to go ahead straight off to fantasy football, give you some last minute tips. Now, this week is going to be a brutal week because there are a lot of teams who are on bye this week, including Atlanta and Denver. So you guys are pretty much stuck with what you have for fantasy football, for your fantasy football teams. It's pretty much not more players I need to talk about to pick up. Like I already mentioned, LeGarrette Blount to pick up for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers against the New Orleans Saints, and Brandon Gibson for the St. Louis Rams against the Green Bay Packers. Now I have a couple of questions that people have for me during this week coming into week 7. Starting with Fred Jackson, he's going to be facing against the Tennessee Titans. Talk about the running back from the Buffalo Bills. Now he had 16 touches last week, and I think he's going to improve a little bit more, probably get 20 touches, but I still think that C.J. Spiller is going to be getting the bulk of the points. But if they get in goal line situations, especially within the 5-yard line, the ball will be put into the hands of Fred Jackson because he's the more bigger running back, and I think he can give you some good, valuable points this week between the 10 and 15 point range this week, seriously, because that Tennessee Titan defense is terrible against running backs in fantasy play. So go right ahead and start Fred Jackson. Next running back I need to talk about, Sean Green of the New York Jets. Now this is an iffy for me. Like I said before, you pretty much have to start whoever you have this week because there are so many teams on bye. Now for Sean Green, I do not really like his position this week against the New England Patriots. They are very capable of stopping running backs from getting points for fantasy play. They only allowed one touchdown for rushing touchdown for a running back for the past 6 games. So I think that Sean Green's going to struggle in this matchup because he is one of that top weapons for the New York Jets, especially with the loss of Santonio Holmes. Mark Sanchez don't really have that many options and no really star receivers in that team. So Sean Green's going to get the bulk of the carries, but I think he's going to struggle in this matchup. So this is a little bit of a scare for him. If you can drop him, go right ahead, but most likely you cannot drop him because, like I said, there's too many teams on bye this week. And last but not least, quarterback Andrew Luck of the Indianapolis Colts. He's going to be playing against the Cleveland Browns this week. Now he has been averaging a league leading 44 passing attempts per game. This is a good season for this rookie quarterback. 7 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. Yes, he needs improvement, but he is just a rookie. I have to give kudos to that, and I think he's going to have a good game for the Cleveland Browns, so he could be a sleeper at the quarterback position this week for fantasy football play. Now that wraps things up this week. Next time I'm going to catch you guys is next week for week 8 of the NFL season. I'll catch you guys then. Thank you for watching today's vlog from Pro Football Exclusive. I'm your man, Akeem McCall. Be easy.